Discover the incredible journey of faith, Saul, Samuel, Hannah. David. A miraculous biblical tale. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the nation of Israel found itself in turmoil, a land yearning for guidance. It was in Shiloh, a sacred place where the tabernacle stood, that Hannah, a woman of fervent prayer, faced her greatest despair. Year after year, she came to the temple, tormented by the biting words of her rival, Peninnah, who mocked her barrenness. Hannah's heart ached. She was at the end of her rope, longing for a child while enduring shame and scorn. With deep anguish, she approached the altar, vowing before the Lord that if he granted her a son, she would dedicate him to his service. Her lips moved silently, her heart pouring out to God, as Eli, the high priest, watched her with wary eyes, mistaking her solemnity for drunkenness. Hannah's reply revealed her truth, an earnest plea for divine intervention. "I am a woman troubled in spirit," she declared, and Eli, recognizing the depth of her faith, spoke words of blessing. God would grant her request, and in due time, Hannah conceived. Hannah bore a son, whom she named Samuel, meaning, God has heard. As seasons ebbed and flowed, gratitude filled her heart, and she returned to the temple to fulfill her vow. With trembling hands, she dedicated her son to the Lord, a living offering, recognizing that he was chosen for a purpose beyond her own dreams. Samuel grew in stature and grace, becoming a revered prophet, a voice crying out in the silence of a nation adrift. Yet Israel, surrounded by enemies and chaos, was in turmoil, fraught with a desire for a king. They looked upon Saul, a man tall and handsome, whose outward appearance captivated the people's hearts. Anointed by Samuel, Saul began his reign amidst great promise, yet hidden within him lay a heart burdened by insecurity. As the shadows of disobedience toyed with his spirit, the kingdom began to falter. He drifted away from God's commands, leading the nation into disarray, where fear reigned and distrust mounted. In this turmoil, Samuel received a troubling word from the Lord. Saul's days as king were numbered. With a heavy heart, yet steadfast faith, the prophet set forth on a divinely appointed journey to Bethlehem. There lay God's chosen one, a king for the people, but one who wouldn't be swayed by the allure of human stature. Samuel was about to learn that God saw not as man sees. He looked upon the heart. While his journey unfolded, young David, a humble shepherd boy, tended his father's sheep under the vast heavens, spent evenings gazing at the stars, forging a bond with Yahweh that would transcend ages. Armed with unwavering faith, he was destined to confront giants, transforming Israel with his trust in the Almighty. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As Hannah's plea, Samuel's obedience, Saul's sorrow, and David's ascent entwined, the tapestry of divine purpose began to unravel before a restless people. Their hearts yearned for deliverance, a king who would lead them in righteousness. As darkness loomed over the kingdom, a flicker of hope remained, beckoning them to trust that God's light would reignite their faith. All awaited the next chapter of deliverance, yet the path ahead remained shrouded in mystery and divine promise. And it came to pass as Samuel drew near to Bethlehem, a profound unease fell upon him. The elders of the city trembled at his coming, questioning, "Do you come in peace?" Samuel, with solemn assurance, replied, "I come to sacrifice to the Lord. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." And he consecrated Jesse and his sons, inviting them to the feast, for the Lord had chosen a new king among them. As Samuel beheld Eliab, Jesse's eldest son, he thought within himself, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands before me." But the Lord spoke to Samuel, saying, "Do not look at his outward appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. Neither has the Lord chosen this one, Samuel declared. Thus, Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, yet the Lord had not chosen any of them. Samuel pondered, "Are all the young men here?" Jesse answered, "There remains yet the youngest, and there he is, keeping the sheep." Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him." And they sent for David, who came in from the fields, ruddy, with bright eyes, and good-looking. The moment David stood before him, the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is the one." And Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. The Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. Meanwhile, a dark cloud hung over Saul's spirit, for the Lord had departed from him. The whispers of the divine were silent, replaced by the haunting presence of an evil spirit that troubled him. Saul's heart was heavy, and he sought comfort amidst the echoes of his own unfaithfulness. His servants suggested finding a skilled musician. "A man who plays well shall bring relief," they proclaimed. And they spoke of David, the son of Jesse, a skilled harpist, a man of valor, a mighty warrior, prudent in speech, and a handsome person. It was determined that David would be summoned to the king's court. Thus David entered the presence of Saul, and as he played the harp, the darkness that had gripped Saul began to dissipate. In those moments, David's music filled the air, weaving threads of peace around the king's troubled heart. Yet Saul remained unaware of the future, for God's plans were unfolding in ways unseen. David returned to his flocks, the music fading but destiny calling him onward. His days of quietude were numbered, as ripples of divine purpose swelled into a tide of conflict against the very giants that loomed before Israel. As the people of Israel yearned for salvation, little did they know that God's providence would soon stir, for not only was David being equipped for kingship, but a battle awaited him. This confrontation would unveil the greatest revelation of faith yet, revealing that God's chosen vessel would become the instrument of salvation, not merely for a nation, but for generations to come. Yet, meanwhile, within the heart of Saul, jealousy brewed, a storm of envious rage that would threaten to extinguish the light that was rising. For God had chosen David, but would Saul's heart yield to the divine plan, or would he turn against God's chosen? And thus, the tapestry of divine purpose began its intricate weave, hinting at a greater story yet to unfold. Who would rise in courage to face the Goliath of despair? What would it cost to step into the shoes of destiny? For God was preparing to teach all of Israel the profound truth that true victory comes not from might, but from surrender to the Almighty's will. And it came to pass, in the days that followed, that David returned to his sheep, yet his heart was stirred with a new purpose, the weight of God's anointing upon him. He wandered the hills, keeping watch over his flock, reflecting on the promises of the Almighty, while the Spirit of the Lord emboldened him with courage. Meanwhile, a shadow loomed over Israel. The armies of the Philistines gathered at Soko, and their champion, known as Goliath of Gath, stood before the ranks of Israel. Each morning and evening, he taunted the people of God, challenging them, "Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants, but if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." For 40 days, Goliath shouted his blasphemies, and a great fear fell upon the warriors of Israel. They trembled and turned from the sound of his voice, for none dared to face the giant who towered above them in stature and might. On that fortuitous day, David's father, Jesse, called him and instructed him to take provisions to his brothers who were in the battle. "Take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp," he urged. David obeyed, his heart still fixed on the greatness of God, the one who had called him. As David approached the camp, he heard Goliath's voice rising above the murmur of the soldiers. In astonishment, he remarked, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His passion ignited, David sought to understand why no one would respond to the taunts of the enemy. His brothers met him with scorn, saying, "Why have you come down here? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart." But David's spirit was unfazed. "What have I done now? Is there not a cause? He replied, his heart aflame. Word of this young shepherd's boldness soon reached King Saul. David was summoned into the presence of the king, and there he declared, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Saul gazed upon David, for he was but a youth, inexperienced in battle. Yet, David spoke of his encounters with the lion and the bear, and how the Lord had delivered him from their claws. "Go," Saul said, "and the Lord be with you." Then he tried to dress David in armor, but it was too heavy. Instead, David chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, placing them in his shepherd's bag. With his sling in hand, he approached the battlefield with unmoved resolve. As he stepped onto the field, all eyes were upon him. The giant laughed and cursed him, but David stood firm. "You come to me with a sword and a spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied," he proclaimed. With a single stone cast from his sling, David struck the giant down, and the armies of Israel erupted in triumphant praise, their fears vanquished and their hopes restored. With God's power manifested through him, the young shepherd had become a warrior of valor, for in this moment, a greater truth began to emerge, that God's anointed would triumph over darkness not by human strength, but through unyielding faith. Yet, as victory was declared, a deeper mystery thrummed in the air. What would be the cost of this triumph? How would Saul's jealousy grow in the face of God's unfolding plan? Truly, the path of David was set upon a course of glory, yet amid the celebration lingered the shadows of divine purpose yet to be fully revealed. For the true battle was not merely against flesh and blood, but against the very schemes of darkness that sought to oppose God's chosen. And it came to pass, after David had slain Goliath and the roar of victory filled the valley, the hearts of the Israelites surged with renewed faith. They chased the Philistines, and the land echoed with their shouts of triumph. For the hand of the Lord was upon David, granting him favor not only among the people but also in the courts of the king. As David returned to Saul, bearing the head of Goliath, praise resounded from the lips of the soldiers. "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s, they sang, their voices raised in declaration of a new dawn. Yet, with each note of acclaim, darkness brewed within the heart of King Saul. His eyes burned with envy, for he perceived the breath of the Spirit upon David, a youth deemed unworthy in stature but mighty through faith. Thus, Saul took David into his service, where the boy became one of the king's armor-bearers. Daily, David would play the harp to soothe the troubled spirit of Saul, and in such moments, the peace of God would come upon the king. But the melody of jealousy grew louder within Saul's soul, unbearable like a storm raging against the calm of a summer sea. One day, as they returned from battle, a great celebration awaited in the city. Women emerged from their homes to dance with joy, tambourines in hand, singing praises to David. "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. They repeated, lifting him above the king, igniting a flame within Saul that could not be quenched. The melody was as a dagger to the king's heart, deepening his wrath, and he glared at David with eyes filled with suspicion. The Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, replaced by a tormenting spirit that stirred in his breast. He summoned David, and in a fit of rage, hurled a javelin at him as he played the harp. But David, swift as the wind, escaped the king's wrath, and the javelin struck the wall behind him. Thus began a season of turmoil, as jealousy led Saul to seek the life of the young shepherd who had once stirred his heart with music. Yet in the depths of despair, God was working his sovereign plan. David fled and took refuge in the wilderness, in the caves of Adullam, where he gathered a band of faithful followers, outcasts and discontented souls who sought refuge and hope. In these dark times, David sought the Lord with fervent prayers, and the psalms flowed from his heart, songs of worship that echoed through the valleys. And it was there, amid the shadows, that the Lord strengthened his resolve and revealed truths hidden to those who walked in darkness. For God prepared David in the sanctuary of solitude, shaping him into a man after his own heart, one who would lead Israel with wisdom and justice. And even as Saul pursued him with relentless fury, David refrained from harming the king, for he knew that the hand of the Lord was upon Saul, and he would not raise his hand against God's anointed. But where would this treacherous path lead? What trials would come as the clash between the old king and the anointed one deepened? As David reflected on God's promises, he pondered in his heart, is there not a greater purpose to unfold? The unseen war continued, greater than the battles fought in the flesh, for God was using these trials to prepare a kingdom not bound by mere victory but steeped in divine favor, for the eyes of the Lord roam to and fro throughout the earth to give strong support to those whose heart is blameless toward him. Behold, the journey ahead was fraught with peril, yet it was charted by the hand of providence. The time was coming when God's plan would become clear, and the true nature of his design would be revealed, leading to an unimaginable conclusion, one that would change Israel forever. And it came to pass that David remained in the wilderness, in the caves of Adullam, where the shadows mingled with his thoughts, and the echoes of his urgent prayers reached the heavens. As he sat in the dust, he remembered the victories of the past, and his heart swelled with hope, despite the looming dread of his pursuers' wrath. And there came to him a multitude, every one that was in distress, and every one that was in debt, and every one that was discontented, and he became a captain over them. They gathered about him and formed a band of warriors, bonded not by blood but by shared experiences of hardship and the yearning for deliverance. David looked upon them and saw beyond their ragged appearances their hearts beat with a desire for righteousness and justice. In those moments of togetherness, David led them in prayer and worship. He lifted his voice with psalms, and the Spirit of the Lord moved among them, bringing courage to their weary souls. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, he would recite, and they echoed in unison, drawing strength from the promises of their God. Yet, word of David's growing band reached Saul, and the king's heart twisted with both fear and fury. With a heart consumed by jealousy, he summoned his servants, "Search for David. Bring him to me, for this traitor shall not live while I reign." In the deep recesses of Saul's mind, he imagined plots, whisperings of betrayal. His inability to see God's hand upon David blinded him, and thus, his pursuit became relentless. As David wandered, he chanced upon a fortified city, Keilah, which was under threat from the Philistines. The Lord spoke to David, saying, "Go and smite the Philistines, and save Keilah." And David, heeding the voice of his God, gathered his men and laid siege against the enemy. With incredible valor, they fought, and the Philistines were defeated. The people of Keilah rejoiced, for they were freed from their oppressors, but as the echoes of victory faded, a new fear arose within David's heart. He inquired of the Lord, saying, "Will the men of Keilah deliver me into the hand of Saul?" And the Lord revealed to him, "They will deliver thee." With this knowledge, David discerned the treachery that lurked behind the smile of deliverance. Thus, he left Keilah, for his journey was not destined to end there. As he fled into the wilderness once more, the Spirit of God prepared him anew. For every step he took, he laid his foundation deeper in the faithfulness of the Lord. Even in distress, David sang, "I will bless the Lord at all times, his praise shall continually be in my mouth." His words rang loud in the mountains, reminding both himself and his band that their purpose was written in the annals of heaven. However, Saul escalated his pursuit, roaming the wilderness like a fierce lion, unaware that the Lord's hand was with David. At last, they came face to face, and the tension heightened, for David had the opportunity to silence Saul's anger forever. Yet, remembering the anointing upon Saul, he held back. "I will not touch the Lord's anointed," David vowed, trusting that the Lord would execute justice in his divine timing. Little did David know, this encounter was part of a greater tapestry being woven, a plan much larger than any single heart could comprehend. Why would he be spared when he could have ended the king's threats? The answer lay in God's unfathomable purpose, waiting to unfold in a time only known to the divine. And as the shadows danced on the horizon, a whisper stirred in David's heart, questioning, what must come next? What role does the hand of God intend for me in this unfolding story? For the path ahead, though uncertain, was anchored in God's sovereign design, and with every trial, he was shaping a king who would one day reflect his glory back to the nation. And it came to pass that David and his men journeyed deeper into the wilderness of Ziph, where the rugged cliffs echoed their trials and tribulations. Even as they traversed the barren land, the presence of the Lord remained a comforting shadow, guiding David's every step. In those solitary moments, he sought the Lord persistently, and the Lord spoke affirmatively into his spirit, assuring him of his protection and divine purpose. The Ziphites, a tribe inhabiting that desolate region, discerned the growing reputation of David and his band and offered intelligence to Saul. They whispered unto the king, saying, Is not David hiding among us? Their betrayal pierced David's heart, yet he stood firm, knowing that the eyes of the Lord were upon him. As Saul drew nearer, enticed by the rumor of bringing David to justice, David entreated the Lord, O God, will the men of Ziph deliver me into the hand of Saul? The Lord reassured him, Fear not, for I will deliver thee. Strengthened by faith, David continued to evade his pursuer, knowing that both his life and the lives of his men rested in the hands of the Almighty. One day, as he sought refuge among the rocks of the wilderness, word reached him that Jonathan, the son of Saul, sought him out. Jonathan came, feeling compelled by the Spirit of God to encourage his friend. When they met, they embraced, and Jonathan spoke to David, saying, Fear not, my father shall not find you, for you shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next unto you. Their bond, forged through trials and unwavering loyalty, became a sacred declaration of hope amidst despair. But as shadows lengthened and dusk settled upon the wilderness, Saul set out with his men, intent on capturing David. David, armed with a heart of wisdom, sent out spies to gather intelligence on Saul's movements. The days unfolded in a tense cadence as the two parties moved the fabric of their destinies toward confrontation. Then came a night that held an ominous silence. Saul, in pursuit, found himself encamped near David's south hiding place. As the moon illuminated the valley, David, ever attuned to the leading of the Spirit, crept into the enemy camp with his trusted companion Abishai. They beheld Saul slumbering, a spear beside him, and David's heart raced at the opportunity placed before him. Abishai, filled with fervor, urged, Let me smite him. I will not need a second thrust. But David, gripped with righteousness and a fear of the Lord, replied, Thou shalt not touch the Lord's anointed. Instead, he took the spear and the cruse of water from Saul's side, and with stealth, they retreated to a nearby hill. There, from a safe distance, David called out to Saul's camp, King Saul. Why do you pursue me? What have I done? Look at this spear. If the Lord had not delivered you into my hand, would I have had the power to strike? Saul, awakened from his slumber, recognized the voice of David and lamented, Is that your voice, my son David? The king's heart was stirred with remorse, and David's unwavering trust in God's justice echoed through the hills as Saul reasoned with himself over the righteousness of the pursuit. Yet as the dawn broke, David's heart remained heavy, pondering the burden of destiny that lay ahead. Would there be a time of peace, or would his trials persist? In the quiet of the wilderness, David prayed earnestly, O Lord, show me your way, for the path seems uncertain, yet I cling to your promise. Your plans are not hidden from me, and my trust rests solely in you. Thus, the stage was set for the unfolding of God's greater purpose, a divine tapestry drawing closer to climax as David remained steadfast despite relentless adversity. What would be the final decree over Saul's reign? For in every prayer, in every act of mercy, David was being shaped not only as a king but as a vessel of hope for the nation destined to seek the heart of God. And it came to pass that David took a breath of relief as the dawn pierced through the shadows of the wilderness. After confronting Saul, he returned with Abishai to their hiding place. The tension from the night still clung to the air, yet it was tempered by a profound sense of purpose. David looked towards the hills that surrounded him and raised his hands in praise, for he knew the Lord was with him. In those hidden corners of the earth, David pondered the entwined fates of his life and Saul's. The Lord had preserved him through many perils, yet the weight of the kingdom rested heavily upon his spirit. Freely, he cried out, O God, my rock and deliverer, guide me in this time of uncertainty. The words echoed against the cliffs, yet it was the whisper of God that offered him solace. You are my chosen, David. Your heart is aligned with mine. These words coursed through him, igniting a blend of hope and steadfastness. Meanwhile, Saul, filled with confusion and resentment, gathered his men. He questioned his trusted advisers, asking, Why has David escaped me? Why has the Lord turned away from me? His heart, once aglow with the anointing of God, was dimmed by jealousy and fear. Saul's mind grew dark as the tide turned against him. In a humble abode in the town of Nob, Abiathar the priest, who had escaped the destruction of the city through God's providence, sought refuge with David. He arrived, trembling and clutching the sacred ephod, saying, "David, Saul seeks your life, and yet the Lord has not abandoned you. I have come to bring you counsel, let us seek him together." David, seeing the priestess' distress, replied, "What shall we do, my brother? Can we not pray? Can we not implore the heavens?" So, they fell on their faces before the Lord, seeking his guidance. The presence of the Almighty enveloped them as God's Spirit whispered his commandments, illuminating the path ahead. David received the word of the Lord, "Go and dwell in the stronghold of Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hands." Fueled by this divine assurance, David rallied his men, who, despite their weariness, rose with renewed vigor. They prepared to march toward Keilah, hearts beating in unison with the promises of God. As they approached the city, they fought with valor and reclaimed the territory from the Philistines, marveling at the might of the Lord working through them. Victorious and emboldened, the people of Keilah welcomed David as their champion. Yet, as he stood among the people, whisperings of fear crept into his heart once more. What if Saul learned of their whereabouts? In restless prayer, David sought confirmation from the Lord, "Will the men of Keilah surrender me into Saul's hand? Shall I be betrayed by those I have saved?" The voice of the Lord answered, "They will deliver thee." With this foreboding knowledge, David prepared to leave, trusting in divine wisdom rather than the walls of safety. He and his men escaped into the wilderness, their fates intricately woven by the hands of the Almighty. As they traversed further from anyone's sight, David continued to write psalms, weaving his anguish into hymns of praise. Little did he know how each note would echo through generations, speaking of God's faithfulness amid turmoil, unknown to David. As he moved like a shadow under the watchful sky, the hearts of men across Israel began to shift. For God was not merely preparing deliverance for David, he was stirring a deep yearning for true kingship within the land. What future awaited David, whose lineage held the promise of the coming Messiah? As he continued in his flight, the whispers of destiny grew louder, hinting at a greatness that would transcend even his understanding. A divine resolve was being written upon the hearts of his people, leading them closer to a day of reckoning and glory. And it came to pass that David and his men wandered deep into the wilderness of Ziph, where he remained uncertain and weary. The sun cast long shadows upon the rugged terrain, and with each passing moment, the weight of his calling pressed deeper into his heart. In the solitude, he sought the face of the Lord, wondering how long he must flee from the hand of Saul. In the midst of his turmoil, Jonathan, the son of Saul, sought out David, for their bond was forged not just in friendship but in the covenant of the Lord. Jonathan arrived in the wilderness and found David, weary but resolute. As they embraced, the Spirit of God filled the air. Jonathan spoke with a firm yet gentle voice, saying, "Fear not, for the Lord has not forsaken you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be by your side. My father knows this too." 1 Samuel 23 verses 16-17, strengthened by his friend's words, David took heart, yet he remained watchful, for the echo of Saul's anger still reverberated in his spirit. "What if the shadow of Saul finds us here?" David inquired, his voice laced with concern. They nestled within the rocks, both aware of the precariousness of their situation, yet both favored under the eyes of the Almighty. Days passed in anxious hiding, and lo, it came to pass that Saul heard that David was in Ziph. With fervor, he gathered his men, stating, "I shall capture him this time. He has eluded me long enough." The pursuit was on, and the atmosphere crackled with the tension of impending confrontation. Yet in the wilderness, David found strength through prayer, chanting ancient songs of deliverance, which echoed the promises of God. As the search continued, a messenger came to David, bringing word of Saul's movements. "For behold, Saul is coming down with all his might to destroy you," he said, his voice trembling with urgency. David turned to the Lord, seeking direction once more. "Shall I go up against him? Will you deliver him into my hand? The Lord answered him, Heed the warning, Saul will come, and your life will be delivered into his hands. You must flee to the caves of En-gedi. Thus, David prepared his men. The wisdom of the Lord was their guide as they sought refuge once more, but in this moment of turmoil, God's providence was at work in the hearts of the people of Israel. With each passing day, they began to see the heart of their true king emerge. Whispers grew in the wind of a leader not bound by earthly power but chosen by divine authority. The spirit of the people awakened, as they felt the stirrings of a monarch who would rule with justice and mercy. As David and his men sought the protection of the caves, the cliffs echoed with their voices a melody of hope and despair intertwined. Deeper still, David's soul mourned for the kingdom that belonged to him, and yet he understood that God's timing was sovereign and perfect. While he hid in the shadows, the tales of David's exploits and his righteous heart began to seep into the very fabric of Israelite life, igniting a fervent longing among the people. They cried out for a king who would lead them with faithfulness, a truth that blossomed in the darkened corners of the land, that the Lord, in his wisdom, was preparing the world not just for David, but for a lineage to come, a kingdom that would endure forever. And so, as the sun set upon the horizon of destiny, a question lingered in the hearts of the faithful: what greater purpose awaited David, and how would his journey unveil the magnificent tapestry of God's redemptive plan? The winds of change beckoned, whispering promise, a reign of purity and a covenant that would establish a throne beyond kings and empires forevermore. And it came to pass that David, sheltered in the caves of En-gedi, gathered his trembling band of men, rallying them as the shadows deepened around them. The air was thick with the scent of saline waters and wild herbs, and even in the oppressive silence, they could feel the presence of the Lord enveloping them. David, his heart a tapestry of hope entwined with despair, lifted his voice in prayer. Lord of hosts, he cried out, you who have anointed me, hear my plea. Shield us from the hand of Saul, for his fury rages like a storm. Provide for us, and set a path before my feet. As he prayed, the darkness of the cave felt suddenly warm, for a soft glow graced its entrance. In that moment, a figure approached, an elder warrior from the tribe of Benjamin named Abiathar, the priest. Clutching the sacred ephod, the priest's eyes shone with a divine light, and he greeted David with reverence. The Lord has sent me, he declared. He bids you to stand firm, for the moment of deliverance is nigh. David, sensing the urgency in Abiathar's voice, fell to his knees. What shall I do, mighty priest? What word has the Lord spoken concerning Saul? Abiathar held forth the ephod, his hands trembling. The Lord has revealed this: go down to Keilah, for the Philistines have raided their granaries. I shall deliver them into your hand. If you rise against the foe of Israel, you shall find favor, and in this battle, you will see the mighty hand of God. The air crackled with anticipation as David's men murmured among themselves. Some trembled at the thought of leaving the hidden safety of the caves, fearing the vengeance of Saul. Yet David, fortified by the words of the Lord through the priest, quieted their fears. Let us not quail before the ambitions of man. Our trust is in the Lord who delivered us before. We go forth with his blessing. And so, emboldened by faith and resolve, they journeyed toward Keilah. The path was fraught with peril, yet the unseen hand of God moved upon them, shielding them from the eyes of Saul. David's heart raced with a blend of hope and trepidation, as he prayed continually, seeking the will of the Lord to guide him through the treacherous landscape. Upon their arrival at Keilah, they found the city besieged, its fields ravaged and desperate cries echoing across the hills. Without hesitation, David rallied his men to arms, reminding them of the mighty deeds the Lord had accomplished through their hands. Keep your hearts fierce and steadfast, he cried, for today we succeed not by our strength, but by his. In a fierce and divine clash, the Israelites surged upon the Philistines. David fought valiantly, bolstered by the zeal of God's Spirit within him, and as daylight waned, the enemy was scattered before them. The victory was decisive, and that day the name of David rang through the hearts of the people of Israel with renewed fervor. Yet in the midst of triumph, word came again from the shadows. A messenger approached, breathless and alarmed. carrying news that would change the course of David's fate once more. "Saul has heard of your exploits and has come to Keilah to capture you. He has circled the land, laying siege to find where you dwell." In that moment, David realized the peril of their victory. He turned to the Lord in anguished prayer, seeking counsel amidst retreat. "Shall I deliver myself and these men into peril again? Will the citizens of Keilah betray us to Saul?" The Lord answered clearly through the voice of his Spirit, "Flee to the wilderness, indeed, Saul shall come." And thus with hearts heavy yet filled with purpose, David and his men withdrew, knowing that the path ahead was fraught with twists and trials. Yet a whisper echoed in the depths of David's spirit, a reminder of God's steadfastness, the promise of a kingdom still to come. As they vanished into the wilderness, narrowly escaping the wrath of Saul, the winds carried an unsettling truth through the spirit of Israel: the chosen servant was not merely running from a king, but towards the ultimate fulfillment of God's sovereign promise. What new revelation awaited David? What greater design was unfolding that would echo through generations yet to come? The heart of Israel held its breath, aware that the story was far from over, a tapestry still in the making, woven with threads of promise and divine purpose. And it came to pass that years flowed as a river, deepening the tapestry of God's narrative within the hearts of the nation. David endured trials and sorrows in the wilderness, ever faithful amid the raging tempests wrought by Saul's jealousy. The shepherd, now a fugitive, was steadily forged in the crucible of hardship, as the hand of the Lord was upon him, crafting a king who would shepherd his people in righteousness. In time, the lament of Saul grew as the ashes of his reign settled, consumed by his own hand. For God, in his sovereign wisdom, watched over David, and though he fled, the very trials designed to crush him were shaping a leader of unparalleled faith. The hearts of men grew restive under Saul's unholy tyranny, secretly yearning for the whisper of a king after God's own heart. Then it came to pass, during a season of conflict, that news broke the silence of the camps: Saul had fallen in battle against the Philistines, slain upon Mount Gilboa. The valley rang with the cries of Israel, mourning not just a king, but the crown that had fallen to dust. A messenger came running to David, breathless and ashen, announcing the news with a mixture of dread and hope. "Saul is dead. The king has perished in the battle, and the kingdom is yours, David." In that moment, David felt the weight of destiny's hand upon his shoulders, yet he did not rejoice. Instead, he tore his clothes and mourned for Saul, the people, and Jonathan, his beloved friend. For in his heart, David honored God's anointed and recognized the cruelty of war that had robbed both himself and the nation of peace. "How the mighty have fallen!" he cried, lamenting with a solemn hymn that echoed through the hearts of Israel. After a season of mourning and reflection, David set forth to Hebron, where the men of Judah anointed him king, proclaiming, "Long live King David." The Spirit of the Lord rested upon him, and righteousness filled his heart, illuminating the path laid before him. Yet the kingdom did not fall effortlessly into his hand, for the remnants of division still lingered, with Saul's remaining house clinging to power. In the heart of all Israel, the battle for kingship began anew, pitting David against Ishbosheth, the son of Saul. For 2 years, conflict simmered, yet David, relying wholly on God's wisdom, stood resolute in faith. He prayed fervently, guiding his men with the spirit of unity and right relationship. In this time of tribulation, David proved not only a warrior but a peacemaker, seeking always the welfare of God's chosen people. And as the years turned like the seasons, the kingdom began to heal. Tribes once divided began to unite under David, their true shepherd. He called upon the names of those he had kept close during times of solitude, recognizing their gifts and appointing them in trusted counsel. Together, they sought to establish a reign that mirrored the heart of God, a covenant of love, justice, and worship. It was then that Jerusalem lay within David's sights, a city untouched by bitterness and sin. With fervor, he led his men against the Jebusites, and the fortress fell by the power of God's hand. David established it as the City of David, lifting the Ark of the Covenant into its heart, symbolizing God's presence and unmatched glory amidst his people. The people rejoiced, for God had chosen to dwell among them, restoring hope and intimacy within his covenant. Soon, news spread of a king adorned not merely in crowns and robes but clothed in humility and fear of the Lord. They praised the one who sat upon the throne of heaven and sought his face, for David abandoned himself to the leading of the Spirit, writing psalms that would echo down generations, filled with surrender, trust, and adoration to the Almighty. Yet David remembered the oath he had made with Jonathan, desiring to show kindness to his friend's lineage. In a moment of grace, he called for Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, whose feet were crippled from childhood. "Fear not," David spoke tenderly, "for I shall restore to you all the land of your father, and you shall eat at my table." For David knew, true kingship was not defined by earthly power but by the love and mercy extended to those in need. Thus, the kingdom flourished under David's reign, a reflection of God's covenantal love, binding his people together in unity and faith. As the days unfolded, the eyes of the nation turned not only towards David but also towards the promise of the future, a shadow of a greater king yet to come, one whose reign would withstand the test of time, ushering in an everlasting kingdom, rooted in justice and grace, whose lineage traced back to Jesse. And so, the story of David weaved itself into the very fabric of Israel's destiny, culminating in the divine revelation that God, in his abounding mercy, fulfilled every promise made to his people. Dear friends, as we witness this incredible tapestry of faith, let us reflect upon the trials that shape our own lives and the anointing he has placed upon us. There are seasons of struggle when we may feel like David fleeing from Saul, yet remember his steadfast love, stretching out to comfort us amidst every storm. Let us stand together in spirit and pray for one another, echoing the psalms of truth that inspire us to navigate our own journeys, believing that our God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Now, I urge you, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next powerful biblical stories that will transform your heart. Leave a like now to spread God's word through the algorithm, igniting faith in countless souls reaching out in need. Comment below your own spiritual reflections. Share how this biblical story of David and his incredible journey has impacted your faith. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear the truth of God's undying love and mercy. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony that reminds us all of the profound love and purpose our God has for each one of us.